Okay, thank you everyone and welcome. We're about 5 minutes late. Well, an hour and 50 minutes late, let me put it that way. But worked our way through some stuff this morning. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. And I also note that Councillor Hayes has sent in her regrets today as she's dealing with some family items. We do today want to acknowledge that we're on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples, and it's Indigenous peoples that have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. Their stewardship throughout the ages is certainly recognized. We did receive some public comment on today's agenda. We did receive correspondence from Cheryl Loreto and Jamie Davey, and that's regarding item 6A3 of our Planning Committee meeting minutes and action items. I'm not sure, Council, if we're interested in pulling that. I'll ask maybe for some more information on that from our director, what that's regarding. And then also, I will acknowledge that we do have a supplementary agenda item, and that is a public comment. Director of Muskoka Conservancy, Scott Young, pardon me, has asked to speak today. I will ask at this time, though, if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interests. Not seeing any. That's great. Thank you very much. We do have some invited delegations, but I'm going to try and get through some consent agenda stuff. First of all, the two items that were referenced, I just wonder whether or not we want to remove. There's one, item 6, which is the Muskoka Conservancy. Mr. Young is going to be speaking on that. And then also item 15. Mr. Pink, maybe you can, are you aware, if you're on the line with us here, as they're both planning matters, what those two items would mean? Not always into pulling things, but just one. Item 15 I know is to amend our policy, but item 6 is the Muskoka Conservancy. Mr. Pink, are you around? There we go. Are you aware of the two requests that have come in, and do you want to speak to them a little bit if council wants to pull them? I don't want to read it without.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. Yes, staff is generally aware of the requests. With respect to Mr. Young's delegation, I guess we look to hear that, but we have prepared a draft resolution in expectation of the request to amend the conditions of consent. And then with respect to the policy and procedure manual of the Bylaw Enforcement Division, I believe the clerk did forward to council a public comment that was received. I'm happy to go over that comment, but I believe it was emailed to council. I think in essence, it suggested that some further language be added to the policy with respect to advising the property owner when a complaint has been received in regards to their property.
Okay, I'll live with that. And I'll ask, I need council, do we want to pull those two items and discuss them separately? Do we want to make some changes to them? Or are we okay to adopt them as presented? Councillor Nishikawa first.
Thank you. I believe that the Conservancy doesn't need to be pulled, because I don't think that we're going to reverse our decision on that particular one unless we hear differently. But from what I understood, that it was basically, or maybe I'm mistaken, but I believe that Mr. Young was here to support what we had already heard. But the other one I would like to pull, please.
Okay. Director Pink wanted to have a conversation. Thank you. David?
Just quickly, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just in response to Councillor Nishikawa's comments, I believe Mr. Young is likely to come here today to request that one of the conditions be removed, that being cash in lieu of parkland. So you may wish to hear from his delegation before you decide whether to pull that resolution or change the condition.
Thank you. I think listening to Councillor Nishikawa, I think probably the most prudent thing to do is we're going to adopt everything but those two resolutions, and then we can go back at a later date after hearing both delegates. We've heard the one, but also after hearing Mr. Young. So removing items 6 and 15 from our consent agenda, I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Kelly and seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the Mayor and Council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained on the October 13th, 2021 consent agenda, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary action items. Madam Clerk, just as I read this, are we contained in the October 13th, 21 consent agenda, or are we not the December 15th, if I may? Just the resolution, I believe, should be the December 15th consent agenda, not October 13th. Because it's today's consent agenda. Okay, I'll make that change. Thank you. Okay, so be resolved, the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes recommendations contained in the December 15th, which is today, 2021 consent agenda, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. And that is number 1, November 10, GNF committee, action items 1 to 3, November 10, council minutes, November 11th, planning committee minutes, action items 1 to 5, 7 to 14, and 16. November 23rd, special council meeting minutes, action items 2 and 3, as well as November 30th, special council minutes. Any comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Young is here. Why don't we move right ahead, and I think we're going to talk of him delegating a little bit later, but Scott, maybe we'll welcome you to the meeting and we'll discuss those 2 items. Thank you. There he is, Mr. Young. Nice Instagram photo with your family Christmas tree, by the way. Okay, you don't mute your mic.
You can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
All right.
Welcome.
I look like maybe I'm a little out of the picture too here. Hang on. Oh, no. Oh, well, sorry about that. I'll have to duck. Like,
It's a very conservancy thing to do, to duck.
yeah, it beats goosing. Oh boy. Anyway, all right. So I'll just deal with that. Sorry about that. So hi everybody. Thanks for having me to your meeting today. I just wanted to make a request that the township consider the recommendation regarding the cash in lieu of parkland for the nature reserve. I would offer the following points for your one is that Muskoka Conservancy has a proven track record of offering hiking trails on several of our nature reserve properties. Through the whole fundraising process and working with the neighboring property owners that helped us acquire this nature reserve, we have a general base of support in the neighborhood for establishing a trail on this property. And so our partners that we've been working with are supportive. We already have an established parking area that previously was a garbage dump, and we were able to work with our partners to get that cleaned up. And so it's already an area that's cleared and established near the driveway where we can park several cars. So basically it's a really ideal property. We've hiked it already a couple of times and looked around and have some ideas where we might establish some trails. And we know from experience by operating a few properties that we allow public access to that cutting, marking, and signing trails can be a significant expense at the beginning of the process. And also it's a pretty good volunteer commitment too, that we'd have to put in to establish a proper trail there. That, you know, a type of trail that, you know, is safe to hike on and people don't get lost and that sort of thing. And also the ongoing maintenance of a trail is a regular annual expense and a volunteer commitment. But these are things we're willing to do because it helps us and helps our organization interact with people and engage people and help them understand what we do as a nature conservancy. It's much, much better than like handing out brochures or even, YouTube videos and social media. It's much, much better for us to engage with people on the land. And it's a win for the conservancy, and it's something that we're going to do regardless whether you charge us the parkland dedication fee. But we would ask that you consider waiving it, simply because it puts us a little farther ahead on, rather than just paying you the money, we would be able to have that money ready to go to begin our process of establishing trails in the property. So I know I only have 2 minutes, but at this point, I'd be very happy to take any questions or field any concerns if anybody's got any remarks.
Okay, thank you. I will turn it to council this particular time. Questions for Mr. Young or any comments to ourselves? See, Councillor Nishikawa, over to you.
Thank you. Muskoka Lakes has been really fortunate for the number of properties that the Conservancy has acquired over a lot of years, and I think we should be much appreciated. But Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how I do this or what the right procedure would be, but I would like to make a motion that we waive the fees. Because again, we're adding to our trail system, whether it's under some other group's name or not. I would say that the Muskoka Trails Council will be hopefully moving forward in the future to work closer with the Conservancy as well. And so I believe that the Township of Muskoka Lakes Trails Committee should do the same. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I see a thumbs up from another councillor. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, and that's for the mayor. I would support Councillor Nishikawa on that. I think we should waive the fees. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else want to comment? I do have a resolution that would be in that favor to waive the fees. Anybody else want to comment before I read it? See a nodding of heads. Just one question to the clerk in this particular case, because we have pulled action item number 6. We have a resolution to be considered to waive the fees, but should not the second part of this resolution and to enact the balance of action item 6? I'll let you speak to that. Just want to make sure we can do it all in one motion.
We can, in fact, do it all in one motion. The way that this resolution is worded, it has the planning committee resolution be enacted for action with the removal of, and then it continues. So we could do it all in one resolution.
Okay, thank you. Do appreciate that. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that the November 11th, 2021 Planning Committee Resolution PLN 6/11/11/21 consent applications B92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, and 21 ML Muskoka Conservancy Rule 494 be enacted for action with the removal of condition number 4 to no longer require a cash in lieu of parkland payment in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the newly created vacant lot, severed lot C, or the entire lands, whichever is less. Any further comment? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Mr. Young, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And Mayor Harding, I really appreciate your Christmas jacket on this cold, wet, sleety day. And it's really enough to bring a smile to everybody's face. Thank you.
We try. Councillor Roberts has his Christmas tie on as well.
Oh yeah, beauty.
Councillor Jagowitz, if he was to move a little bit to his right, would have, I'm not sure if those antlers on his head or what those might be, but there we go. Something about a China shop.
All right.
Anyway, Scott, thank you. And again, to the Conservancy, thank you for all the work that you do in saving and protecting Muskoka. So have a
great. Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Can we maybe, did I just lose my gallery screen? There we go. I'm back. We do have another consideration, and maybe Mr. Pink, you want to speak to this? I'm not sure. This was we received correspondence, council did, and this was to amend our municipal bylaw enforcement policy and procedures manual. And that would say that staff will also make best effort to contact property owners to advise that a complaint had been received. Any comments on that issue? Do we want to support this change as recommended by those who wrote in? Excuse me, I feel like missing the name, but anybody want to comment on that? I see Councillor Roberts is nodding his head. Mr. Pink, maybe I'll let you go just as to what they're specifically asking for.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, my understanding of the submission, I believe it was forwarded to all of council. The concern is there are policies in the draft manual that would require the complainant to receive updates as requested. And I know we talked about that at Planning Committee. The author has concerns that the property owner is not kept in the loop. I did speak with the Chief Bylaw Enforcement Officer, and we would both have some concerns with the way the request is worded. I don't know if advising the property owner of the complaint immediately is the way to go. That will hinder enforcement in a number of cases. We likely will not receive cooperation or perhaps the ability to investigate what we would if they were not aware. But staff has drafted a resolution to amend the policy, which I think will achieve the objectives of the author. We're happy to make best efforts to reach out to the property owner after an investigation and advise them that an investigation was conducted and that no contravention was found. Just to back up a little bit, I think one of their requests that they be notified, certainly if there is a contravention found, then they are certainly contacted because they're either receive correspondence or charges or a ticket. So I think the addition to the policy that we're suggesting is that where no contravention is found, we can also advise the property owner. I think that's certainly understandable, and we can certainly do that. So I hope that addresses the correspondence. Happy to provide further details if needed.
I think it does. Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak to this because I believe my name was mentioned in the request because I was wanted to see that a complainant was given some updates. And I think I certainly meant that all parties. I understand the director's concern, but isn't our goal here to have compliance? And if by notifying a person there's been a complaint against their property, that might hasten them to comply. So I will accept the director's caution, but I think if it's at all possible, both parties should be aware that it's occurred. Anyway, thank you.
So Councillor Jagowitz, what I heard Director Pink, I know he wants to speak, but just to sort of summarize, his comment was if a contravention was found, then absolutely the property owner would be notified because compliance is part of the process. In this particular case, sometimes if no contravention was found, the property owner may not have been notified, and the revised wording would now notify the property owner. So the property owner is going to be notified. I think that's really what it is. Mr. Pink, did you want to add to that or change? I think that summarizes your comment.
That's correct, Your Worship. That summarized it well. I would just clarify what I was referring to. I think the submission requests that the property owner be notified before the investigation. And the concern there is, take for example, a complaint submitted about the use of a boathouse or a storage building. If we advise the property owner that a complaint's been submitted before we attend the property, I can assure you we will not be seeing any evidence of what's occurring inside that building, and there's other similar situations. So I think the mayor summed it up well. We will certainly happy to add something to keep the property owner advised if there's no contravention found as well. Thank you.
Councillor Jagowitz, did you have a supplemental?
Yes, just maybe I misunderstood it. Would this take place, let's say, within 30 days? Or are we talking like a year while it's being investigated? My concern is just that we not delay that.
Mr. Pink, how long do investigations? We would receive a complaint, and typically how long would it take for our investigation to determine whether or not we need to lay charges or that a property owner is out of compliance?
Each situation, Your Worship, is a little different, and I wouldn't want to say a specific time for all, but certainly it would be much closer to the 30 days, if not much less than that. In most situations, it would not be anywhere close to a year for most situations.
I'm fine with it then, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the November 11th, 2021 Planning Committee Resolution PLN 511-1121 be enacted for action with the amendment to require the addition of the following sentence at the end of Policy 5.5 of the Municipal Bylaw Enforcement Policies and Procedures Manual. And that is, staff will also make best effort to contact the property owner or owners to advise that a complaint had been received, no contravention found, and the file closed. Any further comments? All in favor? Madam Clerk, that's carried. Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to item 7A. We had a notice of motion moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan, regarding our Brandy Lake Association Lake Plan. I'm just going to read this, moved by Councillor Kelly, second again by Councillor Mazan. We resolve the staff be directed to forward the Brandy Lake Association Lake Plan to the Township's official plan review consulting team for consideration and inclusion in the next draft official plan as part of the Phase 5 of the official plan review project. Any further comments, questions on this? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. I'm going to go, I think, right now to our StrategyCorp. I think that's where we're at, right? And Mr. Loreto, I believe, is joining us today. We'll turn his camera on and I'll ask Mr. Hammond if you want to make any quick introductions to this. And we'll wait till Chris, there he is. Welcome to our December council meeting, Mr. Loreto. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Hammond to do some introductory comments and remarks.
Thanks, Your Worship. This report provides an overview and background on the development of a strategy which can be used by council to achieve the clarity it wishes to receive as it relates to District of Muskoka services. So the strategy is intended to guide council and staff activities going forward, and will bridge this term of council with the next. So as the mayor has indicated, Mr. Loreto is here today to take you through the strategy and assist with questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Chris, welcome. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Your Worship. I love the jacket. That's a great fashion choice. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. It's great to be back with you to present the recommendations on the go-forward approach to addressing some of the concerns that the township has with its service delivery relationship with the District of Muskoka. I'll share my screen, and Your Worship and members of council, if it's okay. The front end of the report, as I'm sure you've seen, is a lot of familiar material. So I'll move through the context piece fairly quickly so that we can go to the results of the last workshop that we had together in terms of order of priority around services that we want to dig into a little bit more, and also then shift into what the recommended approach is to addressing each of those issues. So I'll just share my screen here.
I believe you have permission to do so.
I
If
do.
not, we'll grant
Perfect.
you permission.
I'm all set up. I think everybody can see the screen. So just by way of refresher, the town and the development of its strategic plan identified a goal of strengthening its key relationships, and one of those was to look at and identify specific measures that, if achieved, would improve the township's overall governance, fiscal, and programmatic relationship with the district. And so we were brought in to help facilitate council through a discussion on what the issue areas are, and take a look at those a little bit more closely with the goal for this project to look at ways to achieve a greater level of equity within the service delivery approach that exists between the township and the district, and looked at opportunities to come out with recommendations on governance, fiscal, and programmatic issues or areas where there may be opportunities to achieve greater transparency, clarity of roles and responsibilities and value for money to taxpayers from the services that they do receive from the district. So the next set of slides will be very familiar to yourselves. They were base materials that we had in the workshops. They'll also be familiar to those who may be watching these proceedings at home. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on them, other than to say, what the Township of Muskoka Lakes is contributing to the district is consistent with the way the legislation sets out how the district is to be funded, and there has been a relatively significant increase in the contribution that the town has been making to the district. And that is true not just for Muskoka Lakes, but it's also true for your other lower tier colleagues within the district, as they have been seeing their assessments rise as well. And so we know that the way that the province is structured, the primary funding for the district is based on contributions based on relative assessment value. And so if you have more assessment, you're going to be a larger contributor to the district levy, or your taxpayers are going to be a larger contributor to the district levy. And just to refresh everybody, your overall contribution to the general levy of the district is 37%. And then you have contributions to a set of special levies that have been put into place, which are less than that 37%. But for water and sewer, it's 8% contribution through that special levy, and for waste management, it's 20%. And those special levies are meant to be levies that more accurately reflect the level of service usage for those very specific services, and trying to have contributions be more appropriate to the level of usage. And as I've said, while your overall contribution has been going up because the township's overall assessment has been going up, that is consistent across the other lower tier municipalities in the district. So they are also seeing seeing a real growth in their overall contributions to the upper tier. And then in terms of relative contribution of the various municipalities to the district, it's been fairly consistent over the last decade or so. And we know from looking at the district's net levy that there are certain services that occupy the bulk of the funding that is provided by taxpayers. Those services being police services, roads and the reserve for roads, and community and planning services and health. So when we look at the net levy, those are that's where the money that is coming directly from residential taxpayers, commercial and other taxpayers, property taxpayers to the district, that's where the money is being used to fund. And then we know there are other sources of revenue or contributions that go in to make up the overall district budget. And when you factor in provincial transfers and user fees and other charges that are contributed to the various services that the district does provide, you will see that the biggest spending categories at the district level are in environmental services and social and family services. Those other ones that are funded by the general levy are also significant budget categories for the district as well. And so in looking at what the district provides in terms of services, how those are funded, that was the basis to start a discussion amongst council about where there may be opportunities to improve the overall relationship and improve the value for money that taxpayers do receive from those services. You'll recall, as part of the first workshop, we did present what the legislative framework is that's in the Municipal Act that governs the lower tier, upper tier fiscal relationship. And that it does, the legislation sets out that, generally the upper tier government is to be funded based on a weighted assessment. And so those that have more assessment contribute more to the upper tier, and those that have lower assessment contribute lower. This is, I guess, a municipal sector equivalent to progressive taxation in terms of how the district is funded. And so we set out a range of options just to begin to frame what is within the realm of the possible and what the relative complexities are for tackling some of the issues that council would identify in its service and fiscal relationship with the upper tier. And we looked at political solutions, which were really about, using the district council table as a way to address these issues, maybe looking at some joint efforts in terms of going to the province to see if there are opportunities to continue to upload some of the services that are on the upper tier or even the lower tiers to provincial funding. We looked at service delivery arrangements and whether or not whether or not service migration makes sense in terms of either services that are being delivered to the district should come down to the township itself, or vice versa. What makes most sense, or does it make sense to move things off the property tax base, so to speak, and move how services are funded to those who are end users of the service? We also looked at fiscal arrangements. While they're not terribly commonplace in the sector in terms of how lower tiers and upper tiers try to address issues around fiscal and service delivery, we looked at, it is potential to look at cost compensation grants where they're, a municipality, a lower tier municipality may have an extraordinary burden relative to their other lower tier colleagues. And then lastly, we looked at and set on the table, there are structural options, whether it's dissolving the district, going alone, the township going alone as a single tier municipality, or reducing the scope of the district, or changing the basis on which the district levy is assessed. And so we just laid those out so that there was a general sense across the board as to what the range of options were. They're presented here in terms of least to most difficult. Structural changes obviously require both potentially legislative change by the province of Ontario and or significant triple majorities. So having all the stars aligned and everybody agreed to go in a direction in order to make it happen. So the structural options are the most difficult and complex to deliver in the range of options that are available in the relationship. So the council discussion focused in on political and service delivery options for change, with several service areas raised for particularly around clarity of roles and responsibilities. And we looked at the range of services that are provided at the district level. And based on that, we were charged with coming back with some additional thinking on priority areas and approaches to be pursued with the district. And that's what we did to set up the second workshop that we held with council. And what we did at that second workshop with council, as members of council will recall, we asked you to identify and kind of categorize services to be addressed with the district by both potential issue and solution type. So we looked at things in terms of, are they a funding model issue? So how a service gets funded? Is it a roles and responsibilities perspective? Is there some overlap and duplication that is perhaps a source of inefficiency that we want to try to rectify in our relationship with the district? Is it a value for money thing? Just not seeing the value of the service for what we're contributing to the upper tier to deliver that service? And or are there discrepancies or differences in view on the policy objectives that are intended to be achieved with a service? And we looked at these in terms of, okay, if and an issue could straddle all four of those those issue types, then we looked at, what would a solution be? And we looked at two main solution types, which was a common cause. Is this something that is not just, of an irritant to the township or a concern to the township? Is it also concern to other lower tiers, or maybe even the district? And can we find political common cause to try to address those, either by working it out within the family, or maybe there are things that we need to work out with the province? And then the second solution type that we looked at was a service review itself. Does it make sense, given the availability of data or respective understandings of how a service is being delivered and to what level of quality and standard it's being delivered? Does it perhaps make sense to bring in a third party to review and establish an independent perspective on the fact base and put before you and your colleagues across the district and at the district level options for improving the fiscal and service delivery relationship between the lower tiers and upper tiers. And so we looked at a number of issues, as we said, and we really honed in on the issues that are presented on this slide. And, you know, where we came to some consensus was, you know, police services was one area where there was general consensus amongst council to look at, more in the vein of we're not necessarily sure that we're getting the value for money for for our contribution to the district for the OPP contract. There was also significant consensus and I think concern about the potential for duplication in planning services, and that should be another service that is closely looked at. Health services was also identified as an issue by a majority of councillors, and as was roads. Pass-through costs were identified as an issue. Pass-through costs are basically with the role of the district as an intermediary is basically divvying up the invoices to the lower tiers to pay. People don't see much value added service as in that function, and that was identified by as a key issue by 4 councillors. And then there were additional issues raised in terms of the environment, more in terms of watershed management, and how the district and lower tier municipalities need to be more, there's an opportunity to be more progressive and forward thinking in terms of how we deal, not just with the watershed, but what climate change is going to mean to the district. And the airport was identified as an area that should be looked at. And both of those areas were identified as priorities by 3 councillors. And so we took all of these areas away after our last workshop and put some thinking into you know, what would a strategy look like for the township to address the concerns that you do have in these areas, and what would be a kind of an optimal approach to do that. And so we looked at these, and what made sense to us and what our advice to you is we looked at them and grouped them into 3 thematic buckets, each with its own approach to how you would deal with the issues of concern that have been identified. The first bucket is, okay, you know, with respect to policing, roads, and health, you know, it may be time to have a fresh look at each of those service areas and have an independent third party come in at the district level and do a service delivery review on those, and to have an independent party provide its assessment of what the facts are and what the current model is, how effective the current model is in delivering those services, and what some options may be for enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness and value for money of delivering those services. And so we're in thinking about these, we're also conscious of some of the comments that councillors did make in terms of, you know, we got a fairly busy agenda here locally and at the district level. We could be analyzing and get into analysis paralysis on a number of issues. What makes sense from a timing perspective? Then, you know, our recommendation to you is that in dealing with your district colleagues, that it would make sense to not do these reviews all at once, but to come to an agreement on an order that makes sense, and to do these all 3 of these services over a multi-year frame, so each service gets its fair airing and analysis and consideration for how to improve, and that also respects the other priorities and work that has to be done at the district and at the local level as well. The second bucket is what we call opportunities where the township itself can work with the district on a project to identify or to look at an issue and begin to clarify who does what in terms of roles and responsibilities. The one service that we have put in this bucket is planning services, and the approach there, which I'll talk about in a moment in a little bit more detail, is to actually pilot an arrangement whereby certain planning authorities would be, you know, more fully delegated to the township to undertake, and see if they're particularly with respect to districts, the district's interests and consents and bylaw applications, and see if that reduces any perceived or real overlap in the process, and can make the planning function more efficient through that delegation. And we're looking at a time frame of doing that. You can begin it this year with the final year of this term of council, and then carry it in earnest with the next council. And then the third bucket that we have really goes to the political option that we shared with council through the workshop series that we did do. And that's where environment, particularly watershed and climate change, and the pass-through costs are probably best dealt with. They don't rise to the level of needing an independent third party to come in. In the case of the environment and the watershed and the climate change action, I think there is agreement that we're early enough in collaboration amongst the lower tiers and the upper tier, and addressing those and continuing to make that a political priority to push process and progress forward to deal with those issues. And then on the pass-through costs, again, they're not sufficiently of the quantum where it requires you to go outside to have somebody establish a fact base. Those are things that can probably be looked at more closely within a district process, like the budget process, to really understand who is doing what value is added in that, and trying to come to some agreement on whether or not the status quo continues to make sense. Or if a new approach is required. And so these types of things will be ongoing, and just political priorities, certainly from your district councilors' perspectives, and hopefully other district councilors from the other lower tiers at the district council table. So in all of this, obviously, when we look at any relationship, particularly an intergovernmental relationship that exists between the township and its colleague lower tier municipalities and the district, and to the extent that some of these issues also begin to bleed up to the provincial level, we are recommending that, I think it's always been the position of council, your worship, and through the strategic planning process, that this isn't meant to be combative in any form, but it's always in the interest of doing better for taxpayers, and making sure that services are always delivering the value that they're supposed to, and that there is value for money. And so in terms of all three of these buckets, we have some general principles that we think it would be prudent for council to adopt in its approach to pursuing the issues under each of those buckets. The principles are here: collaboration. It's in the spirit of shared interest for residents and taxpayers, and that we're interested in doing this together. We're interested in transparency. Part of these exercises really is about making sure that the data and information that we need to make decisions on whether or not something is working or not working or could be improved is available, and it's understood by everybody, and that we're using evidence to actually to enhance services over time. That there are clear scopes of work, particularly where we are bringing independent experts and seeking independent advice, that what is in scope and what we're really looking at, and the questions that we're trying to answer are really clear. And then looking at regular review, putting these things, we don't have to do them all tomorrow, we don't have to do it overnight, but putting these things on a regular review, and maybe even extending this to kind of all the service, all the major services that the district delivers on a regular review cycle, so that we're always on top of them and keep making sure that our service and our fiscal relationships and approaches to delivering services are fresh and delivering value and are efficient and effective. And then lastly, that the community has to be involved, and that the community interests, the interests of residents, taxpayers, and stakeholders inform these reviews, inform our thinking on how to improve the relationship, or how to improve the overall delivery or funding of a service. So, your worship, the next series of slides go into each of the buckets in a little bit more detail, and we have some recommendations for what the questions are, what the data you should have are looking at it. So let's start with those things that should be, our advice is that should be subject of a district-wide review with policing service. Yeah,
Chris, if I can, just maybe some high level here. I know council is certainly going to want to chime in at some of the future recommendations. So Just as everyone's seen this, everyone's sort of reviewed it. I know we have certainly an engaged council. So maybe kind of get to towards the end where we can have a little bit more of a fulsome dialogue between council on this, and as opposed to working on telling us what's on each slide. So if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So it's there. So the recommendation then, so we can get to discussion. I apologize for that, Your Worship. On roads, OPP, and health services, the recommendation here is that you charge you charge your CAO with going to the CAA group from Muskoka to suggest that we look at current upper and lower tier workloads, and that in the context of that, then put these 3 areas of service on a review track, so that you're not doing it all at once. On the issue with respect to planning services, the recommendation here is that planning committee should pass a resolution directing the township planning staff to engage with the district on entering into a pilot memorandum of understanding to look at those delegations and whether or not you pilot those to see if it makes a difference in the quality of the planning service. And then with respect to environment and pass-through costs, the planning committee should consider and articulate areas of focus for the township's district calendars to advance with respect to watershed management and climate change. And the general committee should adopt a resolution requesting district staff provide a report on pass-through cost administration and alternatives for dealing with those costs and delivering that function.
Okay, maybe we can go to our group screen again. We'll stop sharing. I see Councillor Jagowitz first in the queue.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I wanted to address one of the screens that you had him skip over. Is it possible to put 18 up? We were just going to jump into that. It has to do with policing, and there's a number there that I believe is not correct. And I think it's here at 5. So right there, you're saying that it's in the top right. It says that the service spend is 11%, 15.5 million. That's correct. TML's share in 19 was 2.77 million. No, that's what our share should have been. Our actual cost at 37% was 5.8 million. I think that's a significant change. The 2.77, there were detailed statements of a cost per lower tier in 2019 published by the OPP. And that's where the 2.77 comes from.
It is.
But TML paid 37% of the 15.5, which is 5.8 million.
Okay.
Good point. Certainly can update the chart on that because I think it is relevant. Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. We're beginning to understand that a StrategyCorp report is a good report. Thank you for this, Chris. And I wonder if you could, in 2 seconds or less, explain what you think our next steps should be. Should the council, this committee or this council at least, strike a committee and deal with this issue? Do you have any other municipal experience elsewhere? I'm sure you do, that would indicate a positive way forward for us.
So obviously, adoption of the recommendations. I don't think you need to strike a special committee. I think there are certain things that fall within certain existing committee responsibilities. But typically, the way others have dealt with this is, being very clear at your level what kind of instructions or guidance you want to provide your regional councillor or district councillors, and having them then be well prepared to advocate for that, using existing processes that are available as well. So like the CAO group using existing existing processes, whether it's the budget process, also makes a lot of sense, because these things aren't going to be solved overnight. To the extent you can solve them within existing processes and fitting it within existing workloads, does make a lot of sense and should create that spirit of cooperation, as opposed to trying to force things on people that they may not be ready to deal with or don't want to deal with separate from other considerations.
I'm just going to ask a question, if I may, to Councillor Zavitz in particular. Page 26 of the report does actually have some recommendations in it that our CAO and that group are the ones, myself and also district chair, are, you know, encouraged to start this process versus, you know, TML council resolution that this must happen. We're one of 6 municipalities. So are you suggesting something different, Councillor Zavitz, than this recommendation?
Well, actually, thank you for that opportunity and appreciate the comment. Not at all. And in fact, just wanting to tap into the expertise of StrategyCorp. You know, I recall this, how we got to where we are today. And I appreciate the township taking the time and engaging with the experts, if you will, and listening to us and formulating this way forward. It's now where the rubber meets the road. So that's where, you know, I'm all for their recommendations, of course, and just wondering how we as a group fashion that way forward. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Any comments, questions? Okay, so I just want to summarize a little bit, and thank you, Chris, and to your colleagues at StrategyCorp for helping us. Clearly, a question of value for dollar and finance, and seems to be our theme today of what financial levels are important, as we talked about this morning. And we're certainly working our way through that, but certainly helping guide us and focus our approach versus we pay too much money, and taking it in manageable steps, utilizing the existing processes that are in place. I think we certainly do have a tremendous asset with our CAO and the working relationship with the other CAOs across the district. I know myself in working with other mayors is certainly beneficial, and I also continue to encourage the rest of our district councillors to work those relationships as we move forward, so that it's coming on all different levels to be able to affect some change. You know, the getting out ahead and we want this in a resolution, we have not seen a lot of success in the past, and I do appreciate your strategic approach to this going forward, so thank you. Council, we do have a resolution, and that is moved by Councillor Zavitz and seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the Township Muskoka Lakes Inter-Tier Strategy Final Report from StrategyCorp Inc. be accepted. Any further comments on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Chris, thank you very much. We do appreciate it again, and wish you and your family a very happy holidays.
Same to
Councillor
all of
Bridgman,
you.
you have a question?
Thanks, Mayor Harding. Just out of curiosity, not actually to you, Chris, but it was a great report. Thank you. I do recall that the Modernization Committee at the district level, made up of the mayors, I remember a comment from the mayor of Huntsville saying we haven't even gotten to the servicing part yet. So I guess my question actually to you, Mayor Harding, is, was the OPP, my understanding from listening to those, it's supposed to be somewhere on your agenda with that group, but I'm not sure it's going anywhere. So maybe you can update me on that, and how do we get it out of that group and somewhere else would be my second question if it's not going to go anywhere.
I can give you my personal opinion. Where we spent last winter, very much started what I'll say from a high level collaboratively, and then became very much us versus them, which I don't think anybody liked. And I would, the towns didn't like that either. Got back to a general perspective. We need the chair of the district, John Klink, to help drive this process forward at this particular time. He's the one who's convened that committee. And I think that committee is an appropriate committee, but we're also, I think through this in particular, we're going to empower our CAO through the CAO group to continue to push that agenda. And you have my commitment, council, that I will continue to push this through my fellow mayors to try and reconvene that committee. And my suggestion to Councillor Jagowitz, Edwards, and Nishikawa in particular, again, is to continue to look at our fellow councillors as we sit on various committees and talk about opportunities for service review, to understand bits and pieces one by one, that we can look at everything from an efficiency perspective. And that goes not just for Muskoka Lakes, that makes for the entire district, that we can do a better job potentially in our taxpayer dollars, and potentially special service levy area levies will come out of that. So I'd leave it at that. I think is probably the best I can suggest. If that answers your question. Okay. Anybody else? Again, Chris, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And enjoy some, hopefully some time off.
Thank you, everybody. You too.
Okay. Moving right along, we have a report from the Communications and Economic Development Specialist regarding our CIP. Mr. Moore, welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have too much more to add today, other than we are getting closer and closer to the completion of our community improvement plan. As Council is aware, we have included the updated draft CIP to the report with the changes that were discussed at last month's Planning Committee. And those are in front of you today to consider for adoption. Additionally, I will just mention one thing. Although the CIP hasn't been approved yet, there was some clear emerging themes and trends that were identified throughout the process. One of those in particular being pedestrian safety. And the CIP identified some crosswalk installations in the urban centers as some possible short-term implementations. So with that, staff have begun discussions with district staff on the process to beginning implementation of crosswalks in the urban centers. And they've advised us that one of the first steps is to receive a resolution from council for that request. So we've been included that today as well. So with that, I'm free to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. So there's no resolution specifically for our CIP today, but except for the fact we do have a bylaw to adopt potentially later on. Any further comments for Mr. Moore? Corey, thank you. And thank you for the hard work and for soliciting all the community engagement. So much appreciated. Okay, we're going to move on from this right now, and we are going to go to our HR department. Sarah, welcome, and our vaccination policy.
Right. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Harding and members of council. You have before you a staff COVID-19 vaccination verification policy for approval and the corresponding report describing the need for this additional protective measure. Throughout the pandemic, the township has been diligently following public health guidance to ensure the health and safety of staff, council, and the community. The safety plan requires daily enhanced active screening, physical distancing, mask use, and enhanced cleaning and disinfecting, as well as measures to avoid overcrowding, including remote work and cohort scheduling, building, meeting room, and vehicle occupancy limits, controlled visitor reopening, transparent barriers, training, education, and policy implementation. On September 1st, the local health unit strongly encouraged employers to implement workplace vaccination policies. Subsequently, the strategic leadership team conducted a survey to understand staff vaccination rates in order to inform policy direction. It appears that the staff vaccination rate is currently 90%. Vaccination policies may range from mandatory with job loss to simple education alone. Consideration was given to the risk of exposure in the various jobs, comparator municipality direction, arbitration decisions, and the anticipated impact on existing staff. This, coupled with the high rate of vaccination, has led to the proposed balanced policy. The position of the policy is to encourage all staff to become vaccinated against COVID-19. Where a staff member has not yet become vaccinated, they're provided the opportunity for education about the vaccine in an attempt to gain compliance, dispel myths and misinformation, and help encourage those who are hesitant. For those who choose to remain unvaccinated, a further control will be applied in the form of regular testing, adding to the safety measures already in place. A mandatory policy was not proposed because there are legal ambiguities which exist for our municipal workplaces. A loss of staff would exacerbate our issues with retention and recruitment, and a consequential impact to morale and labor relations could have detrimental impacts on the workplace at this time. Implementing this policy would be a positive step in addition to the existing effective safety controls already in place. If public health guidance changes, a mandatory vaccine policy could be revisited in the future. As this policy may be considered temporal in nature, it would be prudent to delegate the authority to the CAO to cease its implementation. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Kelly, over to you.
Sorry, struggling to find the mute button. Thank you very much. And to Ms. Lehman, I think you've done a terrific job with this. I think it's really sensitive to our needs. But I do have 3 comments or questions that I think that I'm going to suggest you give some thought to before we go final. One, we cover off very clearly the word employee, but I can't help but wonder if it also needs to be applicable to non-employee status contracting workers. In other words, do we have people who aren't really employees who you might want to consider extending this to? And by that, I also would include members of council, because I don't believe members of council are employees of the township either. And my last point is, oh, no, 2 more points. There's a line in here that says somewhere that everybody hired after a certain date, which presumably is tomorrow, must comply with this policy as a condition of employment. Because they're silent on people who are already employees, I assume this is not a condition of employment for them. And I just want to make sure we realize that. And the last final point, the way you've described fully vaccinated, and you set a timeline for proving this graduated series of vaccinations. You have to show your first vaccination by January, your second one by March. To be honest with you, as the definition of fully vaccinated kind of evolves, does this adequately cover off 3rd and 4th and 5th possible vaccinations or boosters or whatever might be necessary in order to maintain full vaccination? So those are my 3 comments, but I really like this. I think this is a really appropriate way to approach it.
Sarah, do you want to comment on those?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the timeline is about that implementation. So it sort of relates to 2 of your points. For staff going forward, assuming, after the March date when everyone's expected to be fully vaccinated and on this program, other people wouldn't have a waiting period. So, you would be required to provide your proof upon hire. I think that's really the only change for a new person coming in terms of the condition of employment. The others were giving notification and adequate time, and that's our expectation. In this approach, there's no job loss, so the condition is less critical. I'm not sure if that's clear. As for contractors and council, something that we discussed. So it really does only speak to staff, because as elected officials, we don't have the same control over that group. So similar to a contractor, we're not holding anyone out of this workplace or place of business because of a vaccination status. So I'm not sure that there are other contractors who we would want to explore. And the fully vaccinated with the boosters, hoping that we have the broad definition of fully vaccinated. So as it relates to Health Canada's definition. So I'm hoping that will adequately flex with as that definition may change over time. There'll be different timelines depending on when someone got their second shot, when the booster. So if we just keep it broad and tie it into Health Canada's definition, I'm hoping that the policy will be able to grow with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, does that answer your questions? I think it's going to be a bit of a moving target from a
I
policy
think
update.
I think all the questions were answered with, I would only encourage you to have another look at the way that you phrased the thing about condition of employment, because I would not want to put ourselves in a situation where somebody unvaccinated employee working in the office and he or she refuses to take the periodic test, and we can't do anything about it because it's not a condition of their employment because they were hired yesterday. That's the only point I'm trying to cover.
Okay.
Okay, Sarah, I'll let you digest that one. I think it might be covered off, but we'll circle back to that in a little bit. Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to jump to a different computer to read the report clearer. I'm just, quite frankly, I'm very disappointed that the Township of Muskoka Lakes is so behind in bringing this information forward. And it doesn't reflect on Sarah but the reality is that our surrounding communities have also brought in their recommendations, and it just feels like I'm very concerned about the March date. I get now that we're sort of stuck, and I also don't know how this relates to like who's paying for the testing and how frequent the tests are, because I'm sorry, I just can't pull up the report that would say that for me at this point. But I'm very concerned about, it just feels like, if anything, we could have followed district a little closer, and it doesn't feel that way to me at this point.
Okay, I'll leave that comment aside, but I'll go to Sarah regarding the testing and who pays for the testing.
Yeah, thank you. So at this time, we are able to obtain free testing through the province, and the schedule would be 3 times a week for a full-time person. Yeah, I think those are the 2 questions.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa, you had a follow-up?
Well, I have a problem with that for sure, because that's not what these testings were supposed to be. It wasn't just to supply people who chose not to be part of the program a free get out of jail card kind of thing. And I certainly would hope that never would our township have to pay for those employees' tests. I don't think that should be a benefit of employment in our township where others have to pay for those tests. I'll give you an example. We have to pay for tests for family members to come into my mother's home. I mean, it's just the reality because she happens to live in a congregate setting. And so I don't really agree that we should be moving forward where we are going to supply any testing that is paid for through this municipality.
Okay, well, currently, thankfully, we don't have to pay for any testing, so may have to reevaluate that in the future. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And I would like a supplemental just before we call for the vote, please. And the comment I have right now, I support what Councillor Nishikawa said, and the same concerns, I echo those. And with Councillor Kelly, I do also feel that council needs to have a policy similar to this. I don't know whether staff write it or we write it, but I think that we need this, as well as any vendor coming into specifically our offices and any visitors coming into our offices. If I go into a hockey arena, if I go into a restaurant, before I can get there, I need to show my vaccination status or I cannot enter. So, and so specifically for the offices, I think we need to implement that. And so, so the question is, how do we move that forward for councillor, vendors, and visitors? And then before the vote, I have a query.
or thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go to our CAO, and I see Sarah also wants to comment. I will say the one issue with a policy regarding council, as I've heard, how are you going to tell your people who elected you that you're not allowed to do your job?
The same way the federal government does, and the provincial.
Well, I think that's a different legislation. So I'm going to leave that one aside. I think as council, we're going to all be okay through this policy. So I'll leave that aside, and we're still meeting on Zoom, so we're not even in person. The CAO, I think, wanted to comment briefly, and then maybe let Sarah make a comment.
Thanks, Your Worship. With respect to Councillor Nishikawa's question about the payment of the cost of the testing, so the financial implications sections of the report does speak to the test being free, and if that does not continue, the cost would be borne by the employee. That said, most recently, as yesterday, it's my understanding that the federal government is going to be allocating further resources for rapid testing to pass on to the provinces. So that looks like it's going to continue. With respect to contractors entering the building, we do insist upon active screening. We still have those measures that we are ensuring that they follow. And with respect to the public, there has not been a provincial mandate to other than at arenas and community centers, there is no similar mandate for proof of vaccination coming into facilities like the municipal office. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions. The first one is I'd just like to understand what the 90% vaccination rate with staff is. Is that 90% that have 2 doses or 3? Maybe I'll get all 3 out and then you can answer. Secondly, I don't understand. I understand with our existing staff that we have to be careful about making vaccination mandatory. But I don't understand why we would hire a new person who wasn't fully vaccinated. And I just think you should rethink that. And I mean today, like why would we bring on another staff member if they aren't fully vaccinated or haven't made a commitment to be they can't because of timing? And then the third item, I'm with several of the other councillors. I don't like the March 31st date. That's 3.5 months from now. Surely we can get this policy in place in a couple of months. So those are my 2 questions and 1 comment, I guess.
Okay, I may go to Ms. Lemon to handle some of that. And I think Councillor Jagowitz, the policy actually is in place today if we vote on it. The full implementation, however, continues on. Sarah, do you want to comment on some of the other questions? And I'm also going to provide a comment on potential future employees.
Sure, thank you. So the regulation, which provides vaccination requirements for various workplaces, only allows certain employers to require vaccination and certain others to opt into that. So for example, a grocery store may not require vaccination to be proven. And so we don't fall under, the municipal office is not a workplace or a business that can require vaccination to visitors to come in. So if you think about the essential, non-essential sort of wording that we've been taking previous to now. The 90% rate would be the 2 doses at this point. A lot of our staff wouldn't be eligible yet for the 3rd dose until January at least, or those based on age and that type of thing. So it's based on 2 doses. And the staff going forward, I mean, we're taking a balanced approach. So that would also go for new people coming in, and we'd be doing the testing as the additional control. And the timing on the policy, it would go into effect right away. So anyone who didn't provide proof of a 1st dose, at least, we're basically just giving, we're giving 4 weeks to collect the data fully. Like, we've collected it informally through a survey. So now we would, do the QR codes, verify 100% where everybody's at. And so we have 4 weeks with Christmas and people taking vacations and that type of thing. And then then a chance at that point, we would communicate today, tomorrow to staff that this is a new policy, and that gives someone a chance to go and get that first dose if they haven't done so. And if they haven't done so by the January date, then they need to start testing right away. So the controls, it's not really a March where everyone's, we're hoping that's the full vaccination date, and then we're giving people a chance to get their second dose in between there. So the policy does become effective sooner than that.
So supplementary, you didn't answer a couple of my questions, so I'll restate them, but the 90%, I understand that's 2 doses. What would be another interesting statistic is what percentage have had at least 1 dose, because that'll tell you the ones, because there's no reason for someone not to have 1 dose time-wise, so maybe a medical reason. So I'd be interested in that. The other is, you didn't, at least I don't think you answered my question on why we would hire someone that's not vaccinated. I understand with our existing staff, there are issues. I understand that, but is there something preventing us from making it mandatory that a person be fully vaccinated before we hire them? Why would we hire somebody that's not? Because that's a person that's not likely to get vaccinated. Anyway.
Sarah, did you want to comment on that? Or I'm also happy to comment, but I'll let you go.
Sure. Yeah, just my response to that was that we are taking a balanced approach with the policy. So it would be the same approach we're taking with our existing staff as we would for future staff. So we're not, we haven't proposed a mandatory vaccination approach. And in terms of the statistics, it was a more informal policy or a survey. So I wouldn't get too much into the details about the 1 dose, with those last 10 people.
So Councillor Jagots, if I can just comment, and I'll give you my 2 cents, if I may. We have a staff shortage across the province, across the country right now. And as we try to fill positions, I believe, and any individual business owner I know, as they try to fill their positions, they are having to understand both sides of this equation. If you were to survey your friends, I guarantee you not 100% of them are vaccinated. And that is the national average. So to be able to fulfill positions, to be able to move forward, they would have to follow the same rules that we would have here that says I need to be tested. I need 3 tests a week that says I'm safe to work. I'm safe to work for those people who are not vaccinated. So, and there's education, and hopefully they become vaccinated. But for me, I think it treats the same, our workers inside and any potential future workers outside, and we do a better job of vaccinating going forward. So that'd be sort of my comment. If somebody else wants to challenge that and say we need to change the policy, I'm open to changing policy.
I'd like to respond if you don't mind, because my personal, I do not associate with people that aren't vaccinated if I know they're not. Most of the people I know in this area are the same. There are issues. I understand there's issues with current staff. If they take the position they don't want to get vaccinated, it's a tricky road. You don't want to be the first employer that gets to court. I understand that. But I still don't understand why we would hire somebody that isn't at least on a track to be fully vaccinated, because if they're not, we're just adding to our problems. But I'll leave it at that, though. Those are my comments anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, we're not going to get into a constitutional discussion, but the simple fact is, I think Ms. Lehman has pushed this as absolutely far as we have the authority to push it. There are economic issues like the ability to retain a workforce, but I don't believe we are among the class of employers who's entitled to discriminate based on vaccination status. And that's not our authority level. That's got to come from a much higher constitutional authority than the municipality has. And until it does, like I said, we've reached into every corner here. I think we have Ms. Lehman has taken this to, as far as I think we absolutely can. I'll
Great, thank you.
leave it at that.
Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Just a clarification, if I could, Sarah, because if we put this in tomorrow, can I assume that until we reach that March, whatever date, where somebody has to be fully vaccinated, they will be tested 3 times a week? Until we know they're fully vaccinated? We're not just going to leave them out there saying, well, you've had 1 dose, and so we won't even look at you. That's my sense. And so I need to know that everybody's going to be tested 3 times a week until that double dose or whatever's called fully vaccinated is in the system. If you could clarify that for me.
Sarah.
Yes. So we had some discussion about this, and actually we did not propose to test those who had received the 1 dose by the January date, because they were making an effort to become vaccinated at that point, and they do have additional protection by having had that first dose. So that was how we approached it.
Supplemental, Mayor Harding, seeing as
Yep.
this costs us nothing with the rapid testing, I think until somebody's fully dosed, there should be testing done. I think it's just a matter of further protection. So that's my comment on that.
Duly noted. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure how to answer a citizen's concern about a building official coming into their home. Do they have the right to ask if that building official has been vaccinated? I've had a lot of construction going on my own property, and that has always been a concern. And I would be very, very concerned that we don't have a handle on being able to answer the public in that case. So, and I don't know who's vaccinated, and I get the 90% and great, but the reality is I would not be comfortable bringing into a building official into any property that I manage. It is not the direction from my clients. And I don't know where that sits. Like, I really, truly don't have any kind of answer or direction going forward. And in fact, does that mean they won't get their inspection done because that particular person didn't, there's a whole scheduling thing to think about as well. Not just the implications at our township.
Sarah, did you want to comment on a inspection perspective?
I would, through you, Mayor Harding, I believe that's a legal question, whether a staff member would be required to provide their vaccination status to a member of the public. Up until now, I know that the building inspectors have been putting a lot of different controls in place when they go and do an inspection. Sometimes they've asked all the workers to leave the site and walk around just with one key contact, and then they're spacing and they're masking and they're them doing the inspection that way. So that's the best I can answer that question at this moment.
Right. Thank you. I guess I would look at it and turn it around a little bit. If I'm wanting a building inspection on my property, I'm inviting the township into my home. And if I'm unsure of vaccination, then I don't invite them in and I wait till the end of the pandemic, I guess.
Bill, you do know that stuff gets left around, right? It's not just a 10-second deal. I really hope that you just didn't minimize this situation.
Not minimizing the situation at all, Councillor Nishikawa, just commenting that we are, in asking for an inspection, inviting people into our home to see our product. And that's who it is. So we have a policy, and if the individual person doesn't like those policies, I believe that's their choice. Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, I do want to thank Ms. Lehman for this. It's tricky. these policies are hard to come up with, and I think there's been a lot of time and thought that has gone into it. The one thing I think that's on my mind today is probably even as you are writing this, the conditions have changed and are changing by hour even now. And so as I've been listening to some of my colleagues, that's what's playing in my mind, that timelines that might have been appropriate even a week ago seem really far out when you're talking January and March. You know, you just have to go onto the news today, and now there's discussion about schools and the numbers of this new variant that's coming out. So I just think, you know, with the work that has been done, is there a way for us to pivot this particular policy to be a little bit with a sense of urgency? I just am not comfortable saying, well, with Christmas coming and vacations, etc., I'm willing to wait till mid-January and then we might apply some testing. I think we have to approach this now, understanding the world has once again just changed on us, and we need to be ready to be as protective as we possibly can, and give time and space for the education for those that are currently employees to get onto the program as quickly as possible. So I think I heard from a couple of colleagues the same kind of sentiment, and I would support the idea from Councillor Bridgman. I think that even if you're at one dose, that we should be testing. It's our job to protect our staff. It's our job to protect our community to the best of our ability. And I think we all have to be thinking with a sense of urgency, given what's happening today. So if timing is flexible, that's what I would say we should be looking at. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm going to ask for a deferral on this subject. I will not be supporting it the way it's written and not changed. So, and I will ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? Councillor Mazan.
Sorry, just as a supplemental, I mean, I am generally supportive of the approach. I'm simply asking, and I didn't really hear from our staff, is that possible for us to address the timing issues? Because what I heard is, you know, we're going into the Christmas holidays, we have vacation, which is wonderful. But I hear daily, honestly, every 30 minutes getting a new email or text about changing conditions. So I just think it's incumbent upon us to say we have a written policy. Is there a way for us to apply a sense of urgency onto some of the actions? So I'd like to hear from staff, please.
Sarah, do you want to comment on that? I think if we are to pass this today, it comes into effect today, and that in itself starts the clock moving. If we defer this for 30 days, the clock won't start until 30 days from now. But Director Lehman?
Correct. I think 4 weeks is reasonable. I think that's the time to give our staff notice and the ability for those remaining 10% to go and book a shot and get their first shot, get started. It's not just an administrative timeline, but that is a factor to collect the information. And all the other controls remain in place. So pivoting continues, and reviewing the regulations and making sure that we're current continues regardless. So if we've been encouraging that we need to, start to really get strict about our cohort scheduling. Remote working needs to be enhanced again. I would just encourage that all the controls remain in place, and we are trying to really not get people into the habit of just let me see how this testing goes, and if that's easy enough, then I won't go and get my vaccination. We wanted to encourage people, go, if you get the shot, then you'll have kind of that period of time to wait and go get the second shot before testing. That was our thought process.
Okay, I'm going to turn to C.L. Hammond. And then I'm going to go to Councillor Edwards. I've already heard from Councillor Kelly, I believe once or twice, and Councillor Jaglitz once or twice. And then I'm actually going to go to the question. We're going to try and enforce a little bit of Robert's rules here as we move forward. So I'll go to Councillor Edwards, who I've not heard from yet. Thank you. Or sorry, before Councillor Edwards, I'm going to go to CAO Hammond. My mistake. Derek.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think a key piece here is that, as has already been stated, the policy, if approved by council today, comes into effect today. We need to be reasonable in terms of the timelines for its implementation. I appreciate that there's events occurring outside with rapidity, but the requirement for testing will come into play once the policy comes into place, but we got to have a reasonable implementation timeframe.
Thank you for that. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. This is a really hot topic. First of all, I would bring this forward today. That's my first thing. Secondly, we shouldn't be letting people come in our offices that aren't fully vaccinated. If they want to do it on the phone, that's fine. And that it's the same as we shouldn't be sending building inspectors out that aren't vaccinated, because they could be passing it to someone else in the public. And you want to get your job done, so you have to. If I want to go into a restaurant, I have to show my QR code and I have to show my license to show who I am. If they can do that for a restaurant, I'm sure that the township, and it's about time we took a stand on this, and that it's the 10% that are bringing this all up. I had an incident a while ago. We all showed our QR codes and everything, which is fine. Somebody there tested positive a day or so after. We all had to go and be tested to prove that we were safe before we could go back in. And if you can do it for sports or anything else like that, we should be doing it as a township. We should be setting an example instead of saying, well, we can't do this and that. It's about time somebody had a little bit of gumption and started going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned before that I'm going to ask the clerk to follow up on a recorded vote on this. I'll provide my particular comment in this. Number one, we know with COVID, regardless of our vaccination status, we can carry the virus. As a matter of fact, when you are double vaccinated, if you're carrying the virus, you're probably asymptomatic, so you are more freely spreading it and not at home in bed, not spreading it. So it's nice to say that we can be vaccinated, but we can equally carry the virus. The fact is, the sooner we can put in place this policy, the better off we are. We have heard from our staff that we cannot mandate certain vaccination policies. We also know that opening the doors to our public following a screening process to get them into this office here to pay a bill, we've been a year and a half where they haven't been able to, and they may not choose to come in, but they will be following the same screening protocols to enter this building that we require. They're behind barriers, they're everything else. We're not socializing with people. And I do appreciate the comments about that we should mandate when we send staff out. But remember, I'll say it again, it is the property owner who is inviting staff. We are not pushing staff on somebody else. The property owner is saying, I would like this staff member to come to my property because I want something done. So it's their choice whether or not they want somebody vaccinated. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to give this to the clerk, who I believe we've got a recorded vote. Madam Clerk, can you read the motion? And then we can go through right now. Thank you.
So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, since he asked for the recorded vote. Seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that the COVID-19 vaccination verification policy attached as Appendix 1 to report number HR 2021-02 be adopted, and that the CAO be delegated the authority to cease the implementation of the COVID-19 vaccination policy should it no longer be necessary or appropriate. So this is a recorded vote, and we will begin with Councillor Bridgman.
Yes, for.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes.
Councillor Hayes is not with us. Councillor Jaglowitz.
yes, on the understanding that staff tighten it up as much as they can as it rolls out.
I'll record that as a yes. Councillor Kelly,
Yes.
Councillor Mazan,
Yes.
Councillor Nishikawa,
Yes.
Councillor Roberts,
Nay.
Councillor Zavitz,
Yay.
and Mayor Harding.
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And obviously, it's a difficult decision for everyone. Fully understand that there are two sides to this equation. And trust me, someone who's been in the middle of many tweets and conversations about COVID, there are many, many sides to this. Councillor Jagowicz, your hand is up. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Council, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break at this time, and then we will come back and get on with some regular reports. Thank you. If you can hear the sound of my voice, council, please make your way back to your computer screens and turn on your monitors. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got everybody back here. We're going to continue moving on, and we have a little bit of an update. Mr. Sharp, I think, is with us because we had some bylaw amendments for FOSS application. Mr. Sharp, would you? Oh, sorry, I missed D. I have put a line where we were supposed to take a break, but we delayed. So I'm going to back up one. Let's go to Director Donaldson. Mark, and our managed services contract. My apologies. Mr. Sharp is on deck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. So the report before you is a request to extend or to sign a new contract or a contract with our current IT service provider, Near North Business Machines. That contract was extended by Council last year to the end of this current year, December 31st, 2021. We have released an RFP as was authorized by Council and are currently working our way through that. However, to ensure we do not have service interruptions and we are able to plan effectively for transition, if that should come to pass with respect to our IT services, we want to ensure that we do have coverage by a service provider as well. So this request is to enter into that negotiation with our current provider. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions on the resolution? Not seeing any. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa and seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that staff be directed to negotiate a managed service agreement with Near North Business Machines for a one-year term to December 31st, 2022, and that said agreement shall be the satisfaction of the Chief Administrative Officer and the Township Solicitor, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign any necessary documentation. Any further comments? All those in favor? Carried. That is carried. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Sharp, the FOSS application. There he is. Good afternoon, Bryce.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. Concurrent consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications have been submitted in the name of FOSS. The subject lands are known as 1794, Peninsula Road, unit numbers 5 and 8. In October, Planning Committee recommended to Council that the applications be approved subject to conditions of consent and removal of as-built finger docks. No concerns were raised by the district or circulated township departments. No concerns were raised by members of the public, and no new submissions have been received. I have prepared a brief report outlining some minor changes relating to the positioning, shape, and size of the proposed redevelopment on the resultant lot, as well as the resultant and retained lots themselves. Staff have no objection to the changes and have prepared a resolution detailing a number of minor amendments to reflect these changes, including the inclusion of a new Schedule 2, an increased setback for the proposed dwelling on the resultant lot from an adjacent environmental protection EP2 zone, a reduced setback for a proposed sun deck and patio from the EP2 zone, a reduced numerical lot coverage amount, and an added exemption to permit the proposed sun deck / patio to be within 50 feet from the high water mark. Staff have confirmed that the as-built finger docks have been removed. I'd be happy to answer any questions from Council, and I believe Mr. Savas Veratis is here from Plan Muskoka to speak to the matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sharp. I'm going to ask Council, do we have any questions on this in particular? Or am I okay to probably read the resolution? I'm seeing that we're good to read it. So Savas, thank you for joining us. But resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that the following minor amendments to zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 4621, bylaw 2021-103 FOSS be approved prior to third reading, and that Schedule 2 to bylaw 2021-103 be updated to reflect a revised consent sketch site plan, that the dwelling setback be increased to 65 feet from the environmental protection EP2 zone, and that the sun deck patio setback be reduced to 52 feet from the environmental protection sun zone, and that the permitted lot coverage amount be reduced to 5,981 square feet or 11%, and that an exemption to section 4.1.4 of the zoning bylaw 2014-14 as amended be added to permit the proposed sun deck patio to have a front yard setback of 45.5 feet. Any further comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a third and final reading, or is that coming up a little bit later on that one? It's coming up. Okay, thank you. Savas, thank you for joining us. Mr. Sharp, appreciate it. We've got a couple of other little reports here from legislative services, but I'm just going to read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the community flag raising request from Alzheimer Society of Muskoka, as outlined in the staff report dated December 15, 2021, be approved. Any comments on that resolution? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I've got another one that I'm going to read, moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that a portion of original shore road allowance on Lake Muskoka lying in front of concession 13, part lot 32, Monk, designed as parts 5, 6 on plan 35R 10822, Ashton, Rule 9, 1437, be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of the said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of Municipal Act 2001, and further that bylaw 2021-182 to stop, up, close, and convey a portion of original shore road allowance designated as parts 5 and 6 on plan 35R 10822 be given 3 readings and passed. Any comments? All those in favor? That too is carried. Okay, we have another little bit of a housekeeping amendment. And this is our official plan amendment for the Resort Village of Minette. Should have read it last month, but we did not. So I'm just going to read this. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-195, being a bylaw to adopt official plan amendment 56, Resort Village of Minette, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments? Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you. Just to confirm that there have been no changes made to it since we last saw it. Is that correct?
Mr. Pink, I want to confirm that there have been no changes to this. I believe that is correct.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only changes are those that were directed at the previous council meeting. There's no other changes made.
Thank you.
Okay. You've all heard the question. All those in favor? And that too is carried. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on here. And this is our community improvement plan, moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-194, being a bylaw to adopt a community improvement plan for the communities of Bala and Port Carling as identified in report number CED 2021-18. Be ready first, second, and third time and finally passed. And that notice of the adoption of the community improvement plan be prepared and forwarded to any prescribed bodies and the District of Muskoka for consideration of approval. And finally, that District of Muskoka be requested to consider the installation of crosswalks in the urban centers in Bala and Port Carling as identified in the community improvement plan attached as Appendix 1 to report number CED 2021-18. Any comments? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. I've got a report for our citizen committee, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-191 to amend bylaw 2019-64 to appoint citizen members to the community center boards for the corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Carried. To appoint a new building inspector, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that 2021-200, being a bylaw to appoint a building inspector for the enforcement of the Building Code Act and the building bylaw of the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I have a duplicate resolution, note 96. One brief moment here.
It's different, it's 202.
Oh, we have a second one. Apparently report to, promote somebody else. Moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that 2021-2002 being a bylaw to appoint a building inspector for the enforcement of the Building Code Act and Building Bylaw of the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? There we go. Second building inspector. Okay, moving on. And I think we go to zoning bylaw Nesbitt and Smith. Who wants to introduce this application to us here? Mr. Soya, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. In November, Planning Committee heard a zoning bylaw amendment application in the name of Nesbitt and Smith, which was considered concurrently with consent applications to create 2 new lots on Hessner's Lake. The retained lot is currently developed for residential purposes, and both of the proposed severed lots are vacant, and residential development is proposed in the future. And a committee recommended that bylaw 2021-115 be approved, subject to a minor amendment to prohibit single-story boathouses on the retained and severed lots. The purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment is to repeal a past zoning bylaw amendment that included lot requirements that were put in place at the time based on a past and now replaced water quality model. It's also the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment to restrict shoreline structures, and it defines specific shoreline envelopes for the construction of docks as recommended in a scoped environmental impact study. And the minor amendment would clearly indicate that only docks are permitted and not a boathouse. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask for a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do you want a recorded vote on all 3 readings? We have first and second, and then we also have a minor amendment, and then we have third and final. May I ask if that might just be as simplified as doing it on third and final vote, or do you want them on all 3? Sorry, I'm asking your comment, Councillor Nishikawa.
Sure. The third.
Third and final. There we go. Thank you. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-115 Nesbitt and Smith, Rule 7-1-2710, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? I think our bylaw says anyone opposed. To oppose, Councillor Mazan, your hand is in the air, or is it a unexpected hand again? Okay, to oppose, but that is carried. Thank you. We have a minor amendment, and is moved by Councillor Mazan, second by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2021-115 Nesbitt and Smith. This amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation. Is hereby approved prior to third reading. This amendment shall prohibit the construction of a 1-story boathouse on the retained and severed lots. Any comments? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Recorded vote. And is moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-115 Nesbitt and Smith be read a third and final time and finally passed. And I'll go to the clerk.
Councillor Bridgman.
Yes.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes.
Sorry. Councillor Hayes is not in attendance today. I'm going to move to Councillor Jagowitz.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Mazan.
Yes.
Councillor Nishikawa.
No.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes.
Councillor Zavitz. Councillor Zavitz, we did not hear your answer.
Sorry, nay.
And Mayor Harding.
Yes. Okay, make sure my microphone's on. Thank you. Molyneux, said be a part of Burgess Island. Where we got? Darling, over to you, Ms. Darling.
Thank you, Your Worship. In November, Planning Committee heard concurrent consent and zoning amendment applications in the name of Molyneux that was submitted concurrently with 2 consents. Severed lot 1 is vacant. Severed lot number 2 currently has a sports court, and the retained lot has a dwelling and a boathouse with associated docks. There's no new development proposed at this time. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to provide an exemption from the minimum lot requirements. Planning Committee recommended to Council that the application be approved. No objections were raised by the Township's Development Service Division, Public Works Department, Building Inspector, Bell Canada, or Hydro One. The Community and Planning Services Department of the District Municipality of Muskoka were not opposed to the approval, as long as deer feeding areas and movement corridors are protected. And 5 letters of concern were submitted by members of the public prior to Planning Committee. No minor amendments are required, and I don't have any further comments at this time, but would be happy to assist with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go to first and second. Moved by Councillor Edwards. Second by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-118, Molyneux Rule 42433, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. No minor amendments, so we can go to third reading. Moved by Councillor Edwards, second by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-118, Molyneux be read a third time and finally passed. I'll go to Council. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor? That is carried. So we're going to move on to our Muskoka Conservancy. Anybody want this one? Where are we at here? Ms. Walker, over to you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. In November, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 39/21, bylaw 2021-127, Muskoka Conservancy, which proposes to rezone parts of the subject lands. The application also will have the effect of permitting severed lot C to have 145 feet of frontage on a Class A road. This was submitted concurrently with consent application B-92 to 98/21ML. In November, Planning Committee recommended approval of the bylaw to Council subject to minor amendments. The following minor amendments were recommended. 1, a rezoning of severed lots A and B from rural RU2 to open space private OS2. 2, a rezoning of part of severed lot F to shown as crosshatched on Schedule 2 draft bylaw from rural RU2 to open space private OS2. And then 3, prohibition on agricultural uses, a farm, a forestry operation, hunt camp, wayside pit and quarry within the open space private OS2 zones portions on severed lots A, B, and F. Submissions were received from the Township's Building and Public Works Department, the District of Muskoka, and Lynn Austin, a neighboring property owner. These submissions are attached to the agenda package. I have no further comments, but I'd be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, any comments or any questions? Okay, a resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-127, Muskoka Conservancy Rule 494, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. Any comments? All those in favor? Carried. Oops. Carried. We have some minor amendments, and I will read those. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2021-127 Muskoka Conservancy. These amendments are minor in nature and do not require further public circulation and are hereby approved prior to third reading. These amendments shall consist of rezoning portions of severed lots A and B from rural RU2 to open space private OS2. Rezoning a part of severed lot F from rural RU2 to open space, private OS2, and prohibiting agricultural uses, a farm, a forestry operation, hunt camp, and wayside pit on the quarry on the open space, private OS2 zone portions of severed lots A, B, and F. Any further comments? All those in favor? That's carried. The minor amendment. Thank you very much. Third and final, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Zabitz. Be it resolved by law 2021-127, Muskoka Conservancy be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That too is carried. Thank you very much. Falconger, who wants this one? Mr. Soya.
Thank you, Your Worship. In November, Planning Committee recommended approval of zoning bylaw amendment 5421 in the name of Falconger, subject to a minor amendment. The zoning bylaw amendment was considered concurrently with a consent application to create one new lot, and the zoning bylaw amendment is required to restrict residential development to a specific building envelope as defined through a water quality impact assessment. However, a portion of the severed lot is currently zoned waterfront residential 4, which is the result of a zoning bylaw that was approved in 2018 as part of a former development proposal that was never finalized. So in order to clean up the previous zoning and to ensure residential development will only occur in the intended building envelope, the minor amendment is required to rezone the WR4 portion to open space. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read first and second, moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved by law 2021-173, Falconger Rule 212.5.2, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. Any comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Minor amendments, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved, Township Council amend bylaw 2021-173 Falconger, and this amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation. Hereby approved prior to third reading. Amendment shall consist of rezoning part of severed lot from waterfront residential WR4 to open space private OS2. Prior to third reading, any comments on the minor amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor? I just need a few others to hold their hands up. Councillor Edwards, are you in favor? Nope. And those opposed, just to confirm? It is carried. Thank you. There we go. Third and final, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-173 Falconger be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? I see 5, 6, and opposed 7, 8, and 9. That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to Jacques. Who's got this one? Oh, Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. In November, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 55/21, bylaw 2021-174. The bylaw will have the effect of repealing bylaw 2008-74. It will define the lot dimensions and configurations of the resultant lots and deem the lot frontage of resultant lot 1 to be 400 feet. Consent application B/102 and 103/21 ML was submitted concurrently. In November, Planning Committee recommended approval to Council and no minor amendments are required. Submissions were received from the Township's Public Works and Building Department, Hydro One in the District of Muskoka, which have been included in the agenda package. I have no further comments, but I'd be happy to assist Council with any questions.
Okay, first and second reading, moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be resolved bylaw 121-174 Jacques, roll 4844 and 4855, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14. Be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. There is no minor amendment, so I'll go right to third reading. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Zabitz. Be resolved bylaw 2021-174 Jacques. Be read a third time and finally passed. Prior to third reading, Council, any comments? All those in favor? Okay, I've confirmed that everybody's hand is up. We are carried. Thank you. Technical issue here in council chamber. Moving on to McClellan. Ms. Darling, is this yours?
It is. My camera wasn't turning on. Thank you, Your Worship. In November, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3321, bylaw 2021-111 in the name of McClellan. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to expand a dwelling on a lot where more than one dwelling exists and only one dwelling is permitted, and permitted dwelling addition with reduced front yard setback. Planning committee recommended to council that the application to be approved. No objections were raised by the township's development services division or the public works department. The community and planning services department at the district municipality of Muskoka are not opposed to the approval as long as deer feeding areas and movement corridors are protected. And one letter of support was submitted by an area neighbor prior to planning committee. No minor amendments are required, and I don't have any further comments. And I would be happy to assist with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll do first and second. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-111 McClellan, roll 4914, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That looks carried. Thank you. No minor amendments. Moved by Councillor Zabit, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved bylaw 2021-111 McClellan be read a third time and finally passed. Council, any comments prior to third? Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Final ZBA of the day, I think, if I'm not mistaken. No, we got more. Tozer. Here we go. Who's got Mr. Saya?
Your worship, the subject property of ZBA 2121 in the name of Tozer is located on Lake Muskoka and is currently developed for residential purposes. The proposal involves a redevelopment of the property and several exemptions were requested by planning committee. Numerous objections were received and planning committee initially deferred the application and requested that several changes be made to the proposal, including a reduction in the size of the dwelling. However, no significant changes were presented when the application returned to planning committee in November, and planning committee recommended that council defeat the bylaw. I have happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So in this particular case, a vote in the affirmative will amend the bylaw to allow the Tozers to build. A vote against will defeat the proposed bylaw. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-65 Tozer, Rule 6-1990, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. Any further comments? And just to confirm again, this is our Acton Island property, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you for that. Council, are those in favor of amending this bylaw? Those opposed to amending this bylaw? And that is defeated. Thank you. Clerk, I guess that defeats the ability to read third reading. So we will not have a third reading on that one. Did not get past first and second. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next, Citrulo and Hayes. And where we got Ms. Walker, there we go.
Thank you, Your Worship. In September, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA/32/21 bylaw 2021-100. The bylaw will permit a residential dwelling unit as a main permitted use within the community commercial C3 zone. In November, Planning Committee recommended approval of the application to council subject to minor amendments and the confirmation that an access permit had been granted by the district. The minor amendment shall permit the temporary additional main use of residential for 3 years from the date of passing of bylaw 2021-100 in accordance with section 39 of the Planning Act, and shall permit the dwelling only in the location and extent shown on the submitted site plan. And staff has confirmed that a conditional approval for an access permit has also been granted by the district. Submissions were received from the Township's Building Department, the District of Muskoka, and Jonathan Bloomberg, an area property owner, which have been included in the agenda package. I have no further comments, but I'd be happy to assist council with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do first and second, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, second by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-100, Citrulo and Hayes, Rule 7-11-12-2, being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, be read a first and second time. Any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Minor amendment. Moved by Councillor Jaglett, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, Township Council amend bylaw 2021-100 Citrullo and Hayes. These amendments are minor in nature and do not require further public circulation and are hereby approved prior to third reading. These amendments shall permit the temporary addition of main use of a residential for 3 years from the date of passing of bylaw 2021-100 in accordance with section 39 of the Planning Act, and permit a dwelling only in the location and extent shown on the submitted site plan. Any comments on the minor amendment? All those in favor? Oh. Okay, Councillor Nishikawa, I'm not sure if you were trying to speak or not.
Well, Mayor Harding, you're not asking those opposed.
If it's not unanimous, then I will go to oppose, but maybe we did not.
Yes, but and you didn't ask this question earlier, and I did not vote to move this forward. So that's my point, is that
Okay.
I was not asked the question.
Sorry, thank you for that. On the minor amendment, those in favor? That's carried. Those opposed? There we go. Thank you. Third and final reading, moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-100 Citrullo and Hayes be read a third time and finally passed. Any further comments? All those in favor? And those opposed? Thank you. We did FOSS. This is just the bylaw for FOSS. Okay, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved bylaw 2021. I'm just going to go right to this because we've discussed this. Bylaw 2021-103 FOSS Rule 412.5.1 being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now I've read this minor amendment already. Do we just need to go right to third reading because a minor amendment was already considered? Not sure if Mr. Pink wants to chime in or Mr. Sharp or the clerk. I felt that I've already read this. I'm happy to read this again, but I think it's the exact same thing I read just a moment ago. Mr. Pink, what's your feeling? Mr. Sharp too.
Your worship.
I could be missing something here, but I thought that you had given first and second reading and you read the minor amendments, and I thought all that was required was third reading, but
I think you're correct, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Pink, do you confirm that?
Your worship, if that's what occurred, that's great. Then we can just give it third reading. But if I thought if only the minor amendment was read, now that you've given first and second reading, I would suggest you reread the minor amendment.
Okay.
I don't believe you can give a minor amendment before getting the two readings.
Not a problem. We will read the minor amendments on the minor amendment prior. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved, Township Council amend bylaw 2021-103 FOSS. These amendments are minor in nature, do not require further public circulation, and are hereby approved prior to third reading. These amendments shall consist of updating Schedule 2 to bylaw 2021-103 to reflect a revised consent sketch site plan, an increased dwelling setback of 65 feet from the environmental protection zone EP2 zone, a reduced sun deck patio setback of 52 feet from the environmental protection zone, a reduced lot coverage in the amount of 5,981 square feet or 11%, and the addition of an exemption to section 4.1.4 of zoning bylaw 2014-14 as amended to permit the proposed sun deck patio to have a front yard setback of 45.5 feet. For the second time, all those in favor? That is carried. Third and final, which I think we're at now, moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Jaglett. Be it resolved by law 2021-103 FOSS be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. This has been our zoning bylaw amendment day to finish the year 2021. Absolutely. So thank you for that. We do have a number of future meetings. But one thing I just wanted to comment in discussion with the Chair of General and Finance and with our staff, understanding this morning's meeting and regarding our 2022 budget, It's going to be recommended that we actually hold a special General and Finance Committee meeting and not try and put it into our regular General Finance meeting and held on the same day as council. So the recommendation right now is going to be that we'll hold a special council, a General and Finance Committee meeting on the Tuesday preceding, which would be January 11th, and we can dedicate a number of hours strictly to deal with the budget. We won't be passing it the next day, but we will be dealing with a special GNF meeting to talk about all the changes. This will also allow us to issue a staff report on this particular item prior to Christmas so that we can all contemplate the changes. So just to advise council to try and clear your at least midday, probably about 11 o'clock start. There's some other meetings going on in the morning, but 11 o'clock would be an appropriate start time. And we will try and work through that day. So with that, Councillor Bridgman and Councillor Jagowitz.
Just quickly, Mayor Harding, it is our library board meeting that day. So Councillor Hayes and I do have a conflict at 1 o'clock. But we could probably get the library board meeting moved. And I think that's probably what you're going to suggest then, right?
Not necessarily. Our tentative is 11 o'clock. And for the start of this meeting, because there's some morning meetings, so we could go to 11 till 1. And then hopefully, and maybe if you have to delay the board meeting a little bit, but hopefully within a couple hours, we can deal with the budget. So, okay. Councillor Jagowitz, comment?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm my understanding that the staff report will come out prior to Christmas. It will include revising all the schedules as talked about. The written report that I asked for, is that going to be part of it? And my second part of my question is, I believe we're going to be asked to respond with any concerns we have in writing. Are those to be sent in prior to the holidays or after? I just wanted to understand the timing and how that's going to work.
So I'm not sure where we've been asked to respond in writing or where that came from. The scheduled meeting will be on January the 11th as a special GNF meeting to deal with the budget. It was clear that today we needed some more information, some more time, and we need to hold a special meeting to deal with it. So our deferral today is now going to go to January the 11th. Staff will meet all municipal guidelines for advancement of that agenda, which is at least, I believe, 24 or 48 hours in advance. However, I have a commitment, and we have a commitment from our CAO, as well as Director Donaldson, to use best efforts to get said agenda out prior to Christmas. I appreciate that we all want them to be confirmed on that, but if something happens, again, we're throwing this special meeting in and everything else. So Director Donaldson and the CAO have agreed to work to get this out before Christmas, and I know that they will be certainly working on that. We can bring our comments to that special GNF meeting. We do not need to ask comments in advance or written submission in advance.
I believe, Supplementary, I believe that I heard Director Donaldson indicate that he would welcome those comments. Now, maybe I just misheard that. Maybe we could confirm that.
I think, Councillor Jagowitz, as always, any comments or questions on any agenda item, our staff are certainly open to those comments from council ahead of time. So feel free, as you normally would with any council agenda item, but it's not a requirement of council to submit comments prior. Okay, anybody else? Okay, with that, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Jagowitz and seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-2003 to confirm the proceedings of council on December 15th, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Zabit, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that council adjourn at my clock 4:13 p.m. And the next regular meeting of council will be held on Wednesday, January 12th, 2022 at 1 p.m. electronically from the council chambers, municipal offices in Port Carling, Ontario. Comments, questions? All those in favor? That's carried. And as we are meeting for the last time in 2021 as council, for those people who are still listening in, I want to wish everyone a very happy holidays, safe holidays. And I'm going to suggest as council that over the holidays, where possible, unless it's an extremely urgent and pressing matter, that we allow staff some time with their family for those couple of weeks. I do acknowledge the amount of extra work that our staff have done over the past this year, the number of special meetings. And I just want to appreciate all of our staff for the extra hard work that they have done through COVID and managing closing, reopening, closing, a moving target from the province, a moving target from the federal government, welcoming of our new clerk, some changes in staff. And so again, I'm just going to request as possible that staff do not have to respond over the holidays. They can get back at it the first week of January. So thank you all, and we will see you tomorrow morning for part 1 of a 2-day planning session, hopefully. Maybe we'll get it all done in one day. Anyway, see you all in the morning. Have a good night.